And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I am Michael DeLon. Today, I am talking with Emma Powell. And well, first of all, Emma, thank you for taking some time to be with me on Experts Speak.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here because I love the name of your podcast. It makes me feel so good about myself.
That's awesome. Well, you are definitely an expert at what you do. So, Emma and I have a little bit of background. She's a homeschooling mom. We're a homeschooling family. And she has done something I've not done yet. I've always thought about investing in real estate and building my little empire and making it passive so that I can do other things. And I've not yet pulled that trigger because I'm building my current business and different things. And well, Emma just kind of got out in front of me and she's done that. And she's got this portfolio, but she also helps other people learn how to retire early using real estate. And I thought, now that's a really interesting idea. So that's what we want to dive in and talk to, because it sounds like it's available to about anybody, but we're going to find that out here in the next few minutes. So, Emma, tell me, how in the world did you even get doing what you're doing today?
That's a really great question because a lot of us think about investing in real estate, but a lot of us just don't ever take any action. And
Yeah.
I'm looking back on my past and wondering like why I didn't start sooner. I think it was just because I thought you had to have a lot of money to do it, but we were inadvertently real estate investing with our personal homes. So we would buy a brand new house in a new development and they would give really great prices if you're the first couple people to move in, right? Because it's riskier when the development isn't there. Like maybe the pool will never get built, maybe they'll leave with half empty lots. And so, but we were in a booming area, tech industry in Austin, and the developments we bought into all made, and we made money off of that. And then we bought a house that we completely gutted and remodeled. I remember my doctor asking me about it. I was pregnant with my last one at the time, and she was asking me about my stress situation, my situation at home. And I mentioned that we were living in this house that we were remodeling, basically down to the studs. And she just stopped and she said, well, why don't you just get divorced right now and save yourself the trouble? But it ended up being one of the best investments we ever did. We lived in that house for 6 years. It took us about 2 years to tear it apart and put it back together. Our baby was actually home birth in that house. It was a pretty wild time. And then my husband suddenly got laid off. We were thought this was going to be the forever home. The kids were going to graduate high school, so to speak. And when he got laid off, we moved across the country, sold that house, and I got to our new city. And I was a photographer at the time. I didn't have any business. I was just sitting there. I had just graduated college, and I'm just sitting there like, I don't really know what to do with the rest of my life. So I started attending business networking meetings. And for whatever reason, where we were, the real estate investing community was very organized and well formed. And I stumbled into some of these meetings. They wanted to sell me super expensive, like run to the back of the room and buy this product. And I just resisted that. And I started doing a lot of online searches. For whatever reason, it piqued my curiosity when I was trying to attend entrepreneur meetings, and I ended up at these real estate meetings. And I found all of these great resources like a national RIA organization, the Real Estate Investors Association. They have local chapters. I joined 3 of those. I jumped on biggerpockets.com and started reading and listening to that podcast like crazy and just really diving into this. And originally it was just to protect my husband from getting laid off again because there's a lot of risk when you only have one stream of income, whether it's a business
Absolutely.
or a W-2. One stream of income is too risky. If you're injured and you can't make money or you get laid off or fired or whatever the thing is, I felt very at risk from being a stay-at-home mom with a small cottage business and my husband really being the one to bring in all of the money and he get laid off and it was this panic attack. And I thought, okay, we just want to build some layoff protection here. But what ended up happening within the first 6 months, I realized this has the power to not only protect us from a layoff, this has the power to build real wealth, to retire us early, and to move on to the next phase of our life and think about what would we do if money wasn't the barrier.
That is a great question right there. And I love layoff protection. That's good. And having one stream of income is risky. You're right. And I think people don't understand it, but I think you hit it at the very beginning. People think about real estate, but the barrier to entry is just too high. I'm not sitting on $80,000 I can put down on a house. And so talk a little bit about those mental barriers that cause people not to pull the trigger and to stay where they are. And well, let's just talk about some of the barriers that you find of the people you work with that are keeping them from moving forward.
Well, the Securities and Exchange Commission has actually made this definition pretty easy for us because they have something called an accredited investor that right now is based on somebody's net worth or income. So high income earners, 200,000 plus for an individual or 300,000 plus a year for a couple working together, that has to be actually on their taxes. So business owners often don't qualify for that income because we take all the deductions and the depreciation, and on
Right.
paper looks like we make no money, right? But for people who are two W-2 workers, they're earning a high income, who might have 50, 80, $100,000 that they're sitting on that they want to invest, they would qualify for that accredited investor status. People who have a net worth of $1 million or more, not including the personal home, because Californians need not apply for that personal home exemption, but people who own a lot of assets and who are wealthy, and they tend to be more interested in passively investing, usually because they're high business owners, they've got a high net worth in their business, or like I said, high income earners, and they don't want to go out and start a landlording business. And so they think that that's the only way to invest in real estate.
Yeah.
So that's a big mindset block. It's like, oh, I'm going to have to go deal with tenants and toilets and complaining people and termites and all of these problems and midnight calls. And so they don't want to get into it. Another reason they don't want to get into it is because they live in California or another high expense or high cost of living state. And a lot of them choose to not even buy their own home. So they're renting there because they don't want any piece of that real estate. And they know that a lot of times they're living in a state where it has laws that are not really friendly towards landlords. They're very tenant friendly. So people can be almost squatting in their units,
Right.
not having to pay rent because either the eviction process or the squatter rules are so restrictive to landlords. They just have heard too many horror stories and they don't want to get into it. So they can afford to, but they don't want to. They're not in a good location for it, or they don't have time to. So that's for the wealthy individual who chooses not to do it. And for them, passive investing is usually a better idea. It's finding somebody who's maybe not as wealthy or more of a beginner, or somebody who's very experienced, but they're still doing it actively. A lot of active investors end up moving over to the passive side. The more income they earn, the more they get tired of the headaches. So there's usually a shift from really active investing, sponsoring deals, going out and raising capital from some of those wealthy individuals that we meet over to becoming more passive. And that's exactly what we did. So we started out more active because we weren't sitting on a pile of cash. We weren't
Right.
sitting on a high income job. He did pretty well with his new job after the layoff. It was a great pay increase, and it ended up being one of the best things. That layoff was the best thing that ever happened to us because he made more money. We moved to a place where there was a great support community, and it forced me out of my business and have to rethink everything. So it ended up being a really great shift for us. But because we weren't sitting on a pile of cash, we didn't really know what to do to get started. We did have some money from when we sold our house, sold that remodel house. We did force a lot of value into that. So we were sitting on that pile of cash, but it wasn't enough to retire. To retire, we need seven figures, usually multiple seven figures. Let's just say $2 million. And if you're sitting on $50,000, you cannot retire on that. So you
Right.
have to do something active. And so you might be sitting on an IRA, some sort of retirement account that you could actually convert over to be self-directed to invest in a broader array of things than just stocks, mutual funds, and bonds that most custodians allow. So you would switch that over to a different custodian, you'd have that pile of cash sitting on to invest. But unless it's somewhere in that two seven figures, you're not going to be able to retire on it. And so I was sitting on that equity from that house that we sold, and I knew I couldn't retire. And if I invested it passively, that it would take me probably 7 to 10 years just to double the size of the pile because
Hmm.
we're guessing roughly a 10 to 12% rate of return. Some deals do better, some deals don't. So I was just averaging 10%. I thought, okay, well, by the rule of 72, you divide this, we'll multiply this divided by the interest rate, 7.2 years
Yeah.
to double the pile. And that was still not enough. And I thought, what am I going to do to grow this pile of cash? And so I started buying rental houses and very quickly realized from my real estate clubs that I would prefer to be in commercial real estate. I realized how regular people who weren't wealthy could purchase apartment buildings, industrial storage, commercial office buildings through syndication, basically people pooling their money and going in and buying this together. So you have some people who are running it and some people who are passive. And that model really spoke to me. It was kind of new in 2018 because they had just changed the rules about it a couple of years before. And so it's just starting to catch on in the real estate community. I thought this is for me because I can go out and find deals, run deals, and help to raise money for those deals. And this is going to get me a lot farther, a lot faster than trying to build up some portfolio of, 50, 60 rental homes. That just sounded like
Yeah.
that's not passive at all.
Yeah. Well, amen on that, girl. Because I've read the books and different things, and the guy who writes the books has 1,000 rental properties. I'm like, And so
Yeah.
but and commercial, that's an interesting thing because I mean, I'm in Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas, right? I drive by new strip malls that are just seemingly empty. And I'm
Yeah.
like, how do people do this? So you must have a secret formula or something to be able to go, no, no, here's what we do. What unpack because you said commercial real estate and storage buildings and things. So unpack that a little bit for those of us who aren't in the
Well, residential real estate just refers to anything that's 1 to 4 units that people live in. So it could
Okay.
be a single family home, a duplex, a triplex, or a fourplex. So in the East Coast, they call it a 3 family or family. That's residential real estate. You're going to get a loan in your own name. It's considered a residence. You could move into it. Everything else is commercial. So if it's a 5 unit plus for residential, or it's any other kind of real
Okay.
estate, a restaurant, a strip mall, an office, everything else is commercial. So it's great to be able to diversify throughout real estate because there's just so many things that you can invest in real estate for a diversified portfolio. Because I would come in and say 80% of my portfolio is in real estate, and you would tell me that that was ridiculously risky. But at the same time, when you think about all the different kinds of things you could be investing in real estate, there's a lot of opportunity for diversification. So we do have a couple of mobile homes. We have some single family homes. I just sold a duplex and a triplex. I've got other types of things where I own private notes, like I bought the house and then somebody else bought it from me, and
Sure.
then I loaned them that mortgage. So it's basically a private mortgage. So I hold a couple of notes, and I'm very diversified within real estate as well as a little bit outside of real estate. So basically, what that means when you go commercial is anything that's not a 1 to 4 a single
Yeah.
or residential unit.
Okay. Well, that's good. That cleared it up. And I love the idea that you actually became the bank there, holding the note.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is really cool
Yep.
because banks make all the money. Um,
Yep.
but understanding that difference between residential and commercial is really clear, and knowing that because I think so many times we think real estate, we think either single family or duplex or apartment complex. Those are like the two categories, and you just named off storage buildings and things. So help us understand a little bit more about this passive investing through, is it a syndication, is that what you said, where
Yep.
people are pooling their money and they're buying a bigger, or unpack that?
Yeah, there are a lot of rules when somebody puts their money into a deal and expects to earn a return through no effort of their own.
Yeah.
Basically, you're buying a stock in a company, and nobody at Google or Apple is inviting you to their business meetings. You don't get
Right.
to vote, you don't get a say. You do your research on the front end, but once you place your money into a company, you literally do nothing else. It either makes money or it doesn't. And if you have dividends, they just show up in your bank account, or you can, withdraw those when you want to. That's being a limited partner, what we call a silent partner.
Mm-hmm.
And silent partners, you have to be very careful when you're dealing with a silent partner that you structure it correctly, you structure it legally. So that structure is usually called a fund. And syndication could just be you and me could go out and buy a duplex together, and that would be a syndication. I call it a syndication with a lowercase s because we're joint venture partners. We don't have any silent partners in there. You and I are just going to run the thing together. You're going to do this, I'm going to do that. Maybe you're putting in most of the money and I'm doing most of the work, but we're both still doing some work. So
Mm-hmm.
that kind of an arrangement is called a partnership or a joint venture partnership. There aren't really as many rules to follow, just the regular rules of starting a business together. But
Yeah.
once we start bringing in investors who are going to put money in and do nothing else, that includes loaning us money or investing money as part of our equity, like the profit sharing,
Sure.
there are rules we need to follow. So that kind of syndication, I call it like capital S syndication. We do that through a fund structure. So you get on the SEC lawyer, they draw up all your paperwork. It can be 5 figures or more to be able to set this up. There's the correct legal documents, disclosures, make sure everything is going well according to the rules. And then once you have all that done, you file your Form D. Just imagine like a person raising money for their tech startup. We
Yeah.
do the same thing except for a real estate acquisition. And
Mm-hmm.
it's the same rules, the same paperwork, the same concept. So once we file that Form D, we can go out and we can start raising capital. And we do this by just the same way a tech startup guy. We have a pitch deck, we do webinars, we go to meetups, we meet people, we go on podcasts, and we just network with people who are saying, hey, I have some money, I don't have some time, I don't want to be a landlord, and I want to invest some money with you because they're trying to get better returns than they can get in the stock market because real estate's not as liquid, right? If
Right.
your stocks are up or your stocks are down, you can just liquidate it and you're out. But because real estate is a more illiquid, you put your money in and you kind of have to wait. It tends to be less volatile because it's not based on people's whims, But at the same time, people have to really commit like to staying in this for the long term, unless it's a note, a private note. Those tend to be a little bit shorter,
Yeah.
maybe 6 months to a year. So there are a lot of options. You could be a private lender, or you could be an equity partner and do some profit sharing.
Okay. And the way that y'all are structured at High Rise, and I'm speaking out of turn here because I don't know, but if somebody has some money, they're sitting on a pile of cash, right? Because I've seen some people out there say, invest in this real estate. You know, this we're buying a 1,300 door apartment complex, and that's what they're pitching. Do people come to you for that, or do they come to you and say, hey, I'm sitting on $800,000, whatever, and I'm looking to invest in real estate. What you got? And then you kind of work with it. How does that actually work?
I think both. People come in from both directions, and it really depends on the syndicator and what type of marketing that they're doing. Again,
Mhm.
there are a lot of marketing rules that we have to follow.
I bet.
So those of us who are offering private deals, we're not allowed to advertise those deals. It has
Mm-hmm.
to be spread through word of mouth only. And the reason why is because they can accept both accredited investors and unaccredited investors. And so
Okay.
you can't advertise those. They're very private. So people who are offering that type of deal or structuring it in that that set of rules, what they're doing is they're advertising more like lifestyle. Like, hey, I retired early on my passive income. Hey, wouldn't you like to be able to build wealth? And they're not allowed to do anything about the specific deal or condition the market like, hey, something's coming up in California, reach out. And we're not allowed to do any of that.
Okay.
So it's really more of a lifestyle. And people will come to us and say, what are you doing? And we'll say, we have some deals. We form a relationship and then we can share the deals. So
Okay.
you can talk about your company publicly, but you can't talk about your deals. And so they're coming in from that direction. On the other hand, if you're running a type of investment that only accredited investors can participate in, you can advertise it all you want. So we'll
Okay.
be out there saying, oh, we got this storage unit. It's doing a 14% return and a 10% cash on cash return. We're going to hold it for 5, blah, blah, blah. And you can really talk about the deal itself. So people will come in and they say, hey, I see you have a lot of deals. I see you have good deal flow. Put me on your notification list. Let's look at a deal. Or if we're actively raising for a deal, they might say, I like this particular one. And then
Yeah.
they'll go ahead and fill out all the paperwork and wire over the money. And then we're in business.
Okay. So at the end of the day, if I understand this right, if you're an accredited investor, everything's on the table. You can go,
Pretty
and
much.
if you're an unaccredited investor, you really need the relationships. You need to know somebody, and that could come from a webinar. That could come from listening to the podcast and going, I don't know if I'm one or the other, but I really like Emma. And then I'd reach out to Emma and have a conversation with you and build the relationship. And then you could tell me about the opportunities or something. But it's based on the relationship and all of that versus a specific deal. Did I get that?
Yeah, correct. There are some other options. Something that's becoming really popular recently is crowdfunding. It used to be that with a crowdfund, you could only raise $1 million in a 12-month period, but they raised that to $5 million. And suddenly that's looking like a much better opportunity for people who are raising large amounts of money to be able to do both accredited and unaccredited investors and
Ah,
be able to advertise. So what a lot of people are doing is they're offering two syndications or two funds side by side. Well, they have a crowd fund where unaccredited people can come in at much lower minimums. Most of these deals are $50,000 minimum. If you're unaccredited, meaning you're not earning enough or your net worth is too low, I actually don't want $50,000 from that person. I feel like it's too risky and that person is not diversified enough. There are extenuating circumstances where I would be willing to take 50 grand from an unaccredited investor. Let's say they're a business owner and their taxes just look really low and they're one of those people who control everything but own nothing, so their net worth isn't that high. In those cases, I feel like, yeah, they know what they're getting into and they actually do have a lot of assets behind them. It's just the way they've structured things. It
right.
doesn't look good on paper. In that case, I might say, yeah, go ahead and throw 50 grand into a deal. But most of the time, if someone's unaccredited, there's a reason why they're not allowed to participate at those higher levels because they're
Right.
financially just not ready to put that much money into one deal. So a crowdfund is a great option because they have limits of a certain percentage of your income. And you can come in at, say, a $5,000 or $10,000 minimum. And accredited investors who want to invest, but they don't want to put in the 50 or some, I've seen it as high as 250 minimum. They can go in through the crowdfund as well and put a lot less in. And so what they end up doing is they say, well, if you put in $50,000 or more, we'll give you better returns. So if you're accredited, come over here to this fund, put
Yeah.
in more, we'll give you better returns. But if you're not accredited or you want to come in at less than the minimum, go over into our crowdfund over here and you can put in a lot less, but also the returns and the shares are going to be a lot less. And so then you
Right.
get to decide which direction is best for you based on your net worth, your income, your comfortability. It allows you to try people on for size, see how they work together, see how they
Yeah.
communicate.
Well, and the crowdfunding is kind of an interesting thing. You're the first person I've ever heard talk about that, because it might be a way to get to put my foot in the pond per se, to go, I
Yep.
don't even know if I like this, but I'm willing to put in $3,000 or whatever it is, right, in a
Hmm.
crowdfund type thing. And now I'm an investor, which I would love your input on this. The mindset
Yes.
that now I'm doing, now I'm an investor, so I think differently. Does that play into it?
Oh, it completely plays into it because as you said at the beginning of the show, many entrepreneurs and it's even high-paid professionals don't want to think about investing because they have a mindset of I can earn a lot of money actively. So why on earth would I ever take money out of my business or take money off the table and put it into an investment when I can just go earn more if I want to? So sometimes their spending habits are too high. Sometimes they're shoveling everything back into their business. It really depends on the person, right? But they don't have an investor mindset because they can go earn money. And there's a big difference between people who are trying to have portfolio income versus active income. The IRS even gets tax benefits to people who are making unearned income. So earned income is going to be taxed at a higher rate than unearned income. And for me, I looked at that and I thought, well, I can earn the same amount of money but pay less taxes on it. So I really went down that tax rabbit hole. So now we're paying like President Trump style taxes where we get huge refunds or we don't pay anything because we have so much depreciation from our properties. We're full-time real estate investors. That has the best tax benefits of really any structure I've ever seen. And so once we were able to really get into this commercial real estate thing, I was able to go full time into it, and our tax outlook changed completely. Even while my husband was still in a W-2, my my depreciation actually offset his active income. So then it made us look terrible on paper and made us not look like accredited investors. So we had to raise our net worth so we could actually invest in deals. So that mindset of I'll just go earn more money actually can be very detrimental because
Yeah.
to say I want if you ever want to retire, and most entrepreneurs will say, I never want to retire. And here's the danger in that. If you ever need to retire, let's put it that way. If you need to retire early, you need to be prepared to do that. You can choose to keep working if you want to. Build a business, build a nonprofit, go out and do something really meaningful in the world. Financial freedom doesn't mean that you go sit on a beach in Mexico and lose your purpose,
That's
right?
right.
But you need to be able to retire at the drop of a hat for any reason. You need to get ready. And the only way that you can retire is on passive income derived from a portfolio. It's not a hands-off business like, oh, we're going to do e-commerce. It's not going to be from any of those things that you're seeing where you can start a business with no time and no money. Those are
Yeah.
scams.
Yeah.
Don't listen to people who talk about passive income. Passive income is from investing money and getting returns off of a compounding portfolio. And you have to be ready. My brother was injured in a terrible accident, became quadriplegic. My sister, her husband died when she was a stay-at-home mom. These things happen. They happen. I've watched domestic abuse. I've watched divorce. I've watched disabilities. It has been a roller coaster for me of watching how people recover from this and how people prepare for this. If you're an entrepreneur, you have to be prepared because you're the one making the money. It's almost just as risky as having a single stream of W-2 income. So being able to get that mindset that you are an investor, you derive portfolio income, and if anything happens for any reason and you need to retire, could you do it? Could you do it? Get ready. You never know what's coming.
Okay, we're just going to let that question hang there, because that's a great question. That's a good look the person in the mirror and ask that question. Could you, if you needed to go spend 6 months bedside at a hospital with somebody, could you, without your life collapsing and your business collapsing?
Yep.
Could you? Emma can help you answer yes. It takes some conversation and it takes some knowledge that she obviously has because she's done this. All right, I've got a whole list of questions right here, Emma, but I don't have time to ask you all of this. Is fascinating. How do people get a hold of you to take that next step to learn more about how they can build this portfolio income over time by investing in real estate? What would be their next step?
Well, we have a couple of options again, depending on which bucket you fall into. If you are an active business owner or an active real estate investor, especially if you're unaccredited, we have riseclubcapital.com. We meet every Monday night. It's 100% free, and we just look at deals together. We get into the spreadsheets and into the pitch decks, so we get really nerdy and really deep. If you like drinking from a fire hose and you love going down rabbit holes, Rise Club Capital is for you. So you just sign up in there. We've got a free private forum. You can jump into the meetings. We have calendar reminders where you can sign up, put it on your Google or your Outlook calendar, and just join in on Monday. If we like deals, we will pool our money together in a joint venture and go invest in it together. If not, then at least we learn something about what makes a good deal and what makes a bad deal. So that's a really good fit for business owners or people who are wanting to be a little bit more on the active side or who are not accredited. If they are accredited, we have partnerwithrise.com. And that's where you can go and jump on a calendar, talk to me or one of my business partners. If you want to be passive, you're accredited and you want to be a passive investor, then you would come in and start either doing private lending or equity investments through our fund. So Rise Capital, partner with rise.com to talk to us about the passive side, or riseclubcapital.com if you want to be on the more active side.
That's awesome. I love those names. I'm going to make sure that we capture that and put those in the show notes because a lot of my audience are business owners, right? They're out running their business. They're on their phones doing whatever. So they'll be listening to this sometime later. So as you're listening, if this is intriguing, just go to the show notes. You're going to have those links. Reach out and just begin the conversation because this is fascinating. She's done it. Her family's doing it. And you can just tell she's an authentic, genuine person. And that's what I really appreciate. You're not, you don't come, dare I say, you don't come off really sleazy going, it's not a high pressure. It's like, this is really cool. Anybody can do this, but don't go blind. You've got to understand it. And I love the riseclubcapital.com Monday night meetings. Get your foot wet. See if this is something that you might want to do. And as I always tell people, have a vision. What's your life going to be like in 20 years and 30 years? Are you still going to be slugging it out with one income stream? Or are you going to say, you know what, I want to try something different today that's going to make a big impact 10, 15, 20 years down the road? And I love it. Thank you, Emma, for being here. Thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate that. I'll grab everything, put them in the show notes, and keep doing what you're doing and encouraging people to retire early by investing in real estate. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure to come and talk to your audience. And I just love the people who come through a podcast like this. They're wanting to build wealth because they want to give back. And it's not because they just want a fancy car. Those are the kind of people we want to work with. And I think that your audience really embodies that value.
Well, I sure hope so. Absolutely, because that's what I'm all about. So, Emma, thank you so much for being here. Y'all check out the show notes and tune in again next week for another great episode of Experts Speak. Take care. God bless.
Thank you.